And today's guest, Rosalie, is Dr. Robert Fish. He's a doctor. He was a victim in the Holocaust, spent time in the concentration camps, is a survivor, and actually wrote a book on the lessons of love from the Holocaust. Can you imagine lessons of love coming out of the Holocaust? You'll have to stay tuned to hear what Dr. Fish has to say.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. Here is Mitch Jerome.
Welcome to The Crossover, and today we have Dr. Robert Fish with us, and we're honored to have you, Dr. Fish. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Inviting me.
Dr. Fish has come down from Minnesota, and he is an artist. He's also a doctor, a pediatrician of many years, and also worked at the University of Minnesota in medicine. And Dr. Fish, this is the book that we're just going to be sharing with you today, Light from the Yellow Star. And it's a subtitle that really stands out, A Lesson of Love from the Holocaust. What does that even mean?
Well, I think that yellow star is, the yellow color actually has been by through history some discriminatory meaning. So in many places they had scarf or hat. The Jewish people had to use it in order to be identified. When the Nazis occupied certain countries like Hungary and many others in Europe, then the Jewish people first had to be carrying on their coat or on the jacket or on the shirt when they went out. Yellow star, which is a Mogen David, is a David star.
Star of David.
And so that was the yellow star.
So it was to distinguish that you are a Jewish person.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Right.
And explain to us the subtitle of your book, A Lesson of Love from the Holocaust. It almost sounds like that's a misprint, that there could be love coming out of the Holocaust.
Well, I think that many people felt that way in Israel, for example. They didn't want me to use this as a subtitle.
Oh.
I think that the reason I'm using this intentional for many reasons. First of all, I think that to me, to talk about the Holocaust is not just to remember what happened, what we can learn from it. Well, if the Holocaust, what we can learn from it, the exterminating nations, that's what we can learn from it. I think the people who were killed, what would they ask us to do? To have hate or revenge, which led and discrimination, which led to their demise. I think they would like us to learn from it some compassion, humanity, and actually even love. So that's the point. So my thing is about the Holocaust is not what happened with the Jews, what we can learn from it. And just because I was a victim, I cannot be a judge.
Yes, that was a big statement when I read that, to not have judgment.
Right. I mean, I'm not talking forgiveness. Forgiveness is a completely different issue. Forgiveness is that if I hurt you, then someone else cannot forgive me.
Okay.
Because I did something. You can forgive me. If someone killed someone, then I think that has to be irresponsible. So I was asked once about this, because this issue is for many people, forgiveness is a very important part of their life. Well, then I asked one of the Supreme Court judge that what about forgiveness? It's according to American law, the criminal has to be punished. So I'm not talking forgiveness. I'm talking about that if I go somewhere, and let's say I meet in Berlin a young boy, or I go to Israel and meet a young boy, it makes no difference to me whatsoever. Let's assume that the German boy parents were Nazis. I cannot blame him for it anymore than he cannot blame me that my father was Jewish.
I understand. I know you don't focus on the dark side, you focus on the hope and the light. And yet I've got to share in your book even, just to touch on something brief, some of the experiences you went through, so viewers that maybe somehow are not aware of the Holocaust, believe it or not, there are people there. But you even shared it today. One of those was you had typhus, I think from lice, that was passed on to you. and you had really an experience that you went to the sick room, and then what happened from there?
When we were exposed to such a circumstances, I was among the first who get the sickness. And then we were at that time currently in Austria, but that time, of course, was Germany. And we were working there and started to have high fever, and I was among the very first one. And so that the Germans eventually recognized that this is an epidemic. So they put the sick people in a special room. We were accommodated in a school building. And in that specific room, they provided them with everything possible, good medications and food, very, very exceptional food. Meanwhile, the others had to work outside and had a very mediocre food intake. And so that they wanted me to go to that room. And I refused to go there, and I said, I'm not interested. Meanwhile, the people who went there, they get extremely good care. And so one day, I didn't trust them. So that was the reason. Why should they handle me as a sick person when they're killing others indiscriminately? So eventually, one day, 2 trucks arrived to this little place. Kloch is now the name, Kloch, which is a village. And they took 2 trucks, and they said they have room for 30 sick person in a hospital. I was only 29, and the doctor called me because I was the sickest, plus I was the first who was sick. And I said, I'm not going. And he said, what's wrong with you? I mean, you don't trust? I said, no, I don't. And so I refused to go. I rather went out to work. And then it was only so-called one lucky one who was able to go instead of me. Hundreds would like to go there. And it turned out to be that they taken to the edge of the village and were shot.
So there was no hospital period, it was execution. Your intuition was correct.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point.
You were surrounded by this death all the time. Was it truth also that during the bombings, when the Allies were bombing, that they would put you by the ammunition depot?
Well, that was even before. I was in a working camp. A working camp is not a concentration camp. Concentration camp could have a working, but we were a Hungarian 280 person from 18 to 48 years of age who were assigned to a Hungarian military group, and we were building bridges for them. And then when was the air raid, and we had to dig out the unexploded bombs. So that was one of the...
Okay, and they put you by the ammo. Tell us some of the rays of light, some of the lessons of love that you experience in this horrific setting.
Well, I think that, the thing is that we all know about the horror. And that is very obviously anyone who saw any pictures about the camp or liberation of the camp, or even recently some pictures which was taken by the military. So that is I would say, incomprehensible intellectually to imagine that for a single day, for example, they killed 30,000 Hungarian children and women and older men in Auschwitz just one single day. So that is incomprehensible. But what happened is that, and this is what I try to emphasize because I'm talking to young people, in order what we can learn from. And to me, the humanity is the most important we have to learn. And so...
the humanity.
The humanity.
Of which you didn't see much.
Always in these dark circumstances, someone unexpectedly tried to be helpful. It's happened with me, for example, in one situation when the so-called worst SS soldier, who was the most brutal, I was assigned to him with others, and he was beating people indiscriminately. We were very scared, and we were supposed to go out work in the forest to dig out some ditches for a preventive purpose against tanks or something. And then as soon as we get out from the sight of the others, he said, don't do anything. Lay down and give me food.
Just to you? You were alone?
No, it was not
Group?
some, but the others, nobody didn't have to work. So we didn't do anything. As soon as we came back and he was started to be seen by his comrade, then it started to be done. So that it is, even that kind of person could do some human circumstances. Some when it, of course, was
That would be,
forbidden for
yeah.
you.
When we come back from this break, we'll let Dr. Fish explain the story of the peasant woman. Stay tuned to the crossover. We'll be right back.
And now, today's edition of Never Forget.
Today on Never Forget, Vivian Spitz, a court reporter from the Nuremberg trials, author of the book Doctors from Hell, shares her experiences on the war crimes trials of Nazi doctors accused of crimes against humanity. Behind her are various pictures taken by the U.S. Army and other military photographers, denoting the incomprehensible horrors that Nazi doctors perpetrated against the Jews during the Second World War. Vivian's hope is that mankind will always remember a time when humanity turned their heads from the Holocaust atrocities. And the main theme in her speeches is the famous quote from George Santayana, stating, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." The Nuremberg war crimes trials lasted from November 1945 to April 49 and were the first international trials of their kind. German doctors, officers, and soldiers would be held accountable for crimes against humanity and genocide perpetrated between the years 1933 and 45, when Hitler was in power. Vivian's message further addresses the role of bystanders and their part in allowing the Holocaust to occur. When a crime is committed, there is always a perpetrator and a victim. Not getting involved, looking the other way, or being indifferent always helps the perpetrator and never the victim, as Vivian states in her speeches.
I always thought that these concentration camps were just for the Jewish people. I never knew also that the priests, clergy, and all other forms of people were involved in these camps. And Dachau was a very brutal camp. And I am Catholic, and I feel that if I can help just get somebody, one person, no matter what religion, what race, what nationality, to understand what hate can really do to a world that's gone mad, and that we can turn it around by love.
Vivian describes what many Allied officers witnessed upon their arrival at concentration camps all over Europe, and how liberation didn't always mean survival for many of the Jews and dissidents interned at the camps. This man died a short time after this picture was taken, upon his being liberated. Judgment in the last of all 13 cases was rendered in April 1949. The trial case consumed 1,200 court days. There were 184 defendants, 118 of whom received prison sentences. 24 were sentenced to death and only 12 were executed. Who were these Nazi doctors from hell? Many of them were distinguished German scientists, chief surgeons and physicians from medical clinics, institutes, hospitals, and universities throughout Germany. They were the doctors at the concentration camps who performed the grisly medical experiments. They were charged with the outright murder of political prisoners, civilians, intellectual dissidents, non-German nationals, Jews, Catholics, and prisoners of war. Those who did not die suffered torture, became maimed, had cruel disfigurement and or disability. Many of these individuals are still nameless victims of the crimes perpetrated by the Nazi doctors from hell.
That was today's edition of Never Forget.
Welcome back to the crossover. We're in our last segment here. We have Dr. Robert Fish. And Dr. Fish, just tell us again, one of the humane sides of your story was the peasant woman.
Well, I think that was, we were walking through the Alps. Took us almost some months to walk through, and we get sometimes for days neither food nor even water.
Just walking aimlessly?
Just walking, no. We have walked from the early morning until the sun went down.
Do you have any idea where you were even going?
No, we didn't know that. The reason for all this is called the Dead March. The reason for this was because they did not want us to be liberated. So we had to walk, because the Russians now already at the Hungarian, Austrian border or German border. The Americans already in Germany, so they wanted to squeeze the people from the camp. Even from Auschwitz, people had to go. And so we didn't get for days sometimes food or water, and we threw away the blanket in the morning, and we pick up from the dead people in the afternoon, because anyone who could not walk any further, they just sit down and they trod them on the head. So in one day before we started to go to the walk, an Austrian woman threw apple to us, and you can imagine the people started to scream and running to try to get the apple, and she was shot and killed in front of us. So this is just again an example that people, for absolutely strangers, try to be helpful, even so it was dangerous or deadly.
Deadly.
And so this is what I think we should emphasize.
And remember.
In other words, what my purpose of my talks is usually that in order to be respected, you have to respect other people. And then what I try to explain to the young people, that we are born as biological animals. And even if your mother is a good person, you didn't inherit that. You have to learn from it. So it's like the tadpole became a frog. In order to be a human being, you have to learn that. And if you are so smart in the school, why don't you just go home and watch television? Because the brain is not enough. You have to put something in it.
Right. You have to learn to be
And
good or bad.
The other thing is, which is we always talking about, we're going to have another president or the North Koreans or whatever. The only change in this world can be done by you. You are the only one who can change, and you can change a few other people. Don't start to me the big changes we want to do in the world. I'm a citizen of the world. Well, the world does not accept you as a citizen.
Start with the one person that you're
one
you're with.
person of the time.
Great advice, and coming from a person that has had such experiences. Obviously, you have thought deeply on all that you've been through to be able to pass on to us your knowledge.
This was never to me a major subject until accidentally I get in a situation that I had an impact on young people, and this is to me more important than medicine.
You just started sharing this recently?
Yeah, well, it's not recently. It's actually going on almost more than 10, 12 years, and I go a lot of lectures and exhibits, and which I have now in Houston, and talking to young people, and this is to me the most important thing I ever did.
Dr. Fish, you said a lot of the quotes from your book are from the gravestones in the concentration camps?
No, the quotes is actually from the Bible. The older quotes are from the Bible, but this is it's a memorial for the people who were killed in Hungary, and that quotations are there on the different places, on the different concentration camp, and with few names, because it's only a very few names are there. About 700,000 Hungarian Jews were killed, and it's only not even 1,000 names on it, because it's in order to be under that specific wall, I have to say, I saw your father to be killed, and I was the witness. I told you.
Okay.
You went there and you put your father name on it. But most people in Hungary, they don't have anyone who knows what happened. Or
No record.
No record.
There was one quote that you have in there, even death couldn't come between us.
Well, my father was killed also, and he was a very good person, and he was so respected they didn't put him in a common grave. And so when we were lucky enough to find him by a very peculiar circumstances, by an eyewitness who was there, and we took him back, and he was the first who was buried in Budapest.
Were you able to see your father before he was killed?
No, I went with my father before I was taken away. I didn't see him at all during this period of
How old
time.
were you when that happened?
I was 19 years old. Yeah. And so in that cemetery they have quotations, and these quotations all from the Bible, which is very potent quotation. Let's say, I cried against brutality, no one heard me, or even that could not between us, because my father is to me just as loved today than it was when he was in life.
You raised the question in your book, are we the chosen people?
Well,
What
I
would
think
you say to that?
I
What does
think,
that
you
mean?
know, that I think first of all, we're talking about so much about Mohammedan these days. I think it's no bad religion. It's just bad people.
Dr. Fish, I guess I'm going to make a statement here, quoting you, and it's not a question, but if you'll comment, to remain human, even in inhuman circumstances.
Well, I think this is to me one of the major things which is for message for the young people. I think that first of all, when we finish our days, and I mean our lives even, or days, we have to say, I did the right thing for myself and for others. And my time was well spent. And I think that just because I was again a victim, I cannot be a judge. So I think we have to be sure that our life was worth and we're doing the right thing, not just for myself. And then what I really try to emphasize, you cannot be again neutral. You have to make a commitment. You either for it or you're against it. You either suppressing or you become a victim. You cannot say, I don't care, it's not my business. Because if you're not caring, you became a part of it. That's exactly what happened with the German people.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't say, you know, it's a
They
very
didn't react.
famous story about if I came for the communists, I didn't stand up, I wasn't communist and so forth. When they came for me finally, nobody was there to stand up. That's exactly the point.
Yes. Well, I think you've got high hopes for mankind, but
Well,
at least...
I'm not so sure I have high hopes, but I think we have to understand that we are, as a species,
Yeah.
very short life. We are just the beginning, so we're still an animalistic behavior, as we can see day by day.
Well, if you can set the standard coming out of what you came through,
So I think
that's
you
something
have
that you
to-
think we could rise up to.
I hope we can, we can be a little bit different from the tigers or the lions.
You bet.
Although they are very nice animals.
Dr. Fish, we appreciate you
Thanks
spending
so
some
much,
time
and
with
the
us.
very
And
best, and
best
good
to you
luck
too.
and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us on the crossover, and stay tuned. We've got something special for you.
And now, today's edition of The Promised Land.
The country that we live in, Israel, is a country which was born out of a Holocaust. We lost 6 million people, a third of our people in World War II. And we had no allies. We had no allies. I think the Christians, the Bible-believing Christians of America, were basically unaware, really, of what was going on in Europe. And the Jewish people in America were very busy with their lives here in America. And so 6 million Jews died because we had no allies. The testimony which changed my life forever is the testimony from Dallas in April of 1991, where I was told very clearly by the Council on Foreign Relations in Dallas that Israel would be sold out for a barrel of oil, that there would be another Holocaust, that Israel must not withdraw from the Jordan River. Israel must not come down from the Golan Heights. And what I said then was that Israel should not withdraw from Gaza, which we unfortunately did, big mistake. But the point is that Israel, according to the UN resolutions 242 and 338, must have defensible borders, meaning we do not go back to the borders of June the 5th, 67, right, which is what the State Department and the world is trying to force Israel to do.
Which means to give up the Golan and...
Golan and Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. And so I go to the Christian churches in order to mobilize support for the state of Israel, for the Jewish people. And I also try to make it very clear to the Christians all over the world that they are threatened to the same extent as the Jews and Israel are threatened. And I also say basically that Jews and Christians are waiting for the Messiah, who is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. And that Messiah is going to come to Jerusalem. And so Christians share this faith with the Jews. Salvation is of the Jews, it says in Romans.
Yes, it does.
And if the Messiah is coming to Jerusalem, the Christians have a right and Christians have an obligation to defend Jerusalem, to stand with Jerusalem, to stand with Israel, to stand with the Jews. If, God forbid, a Palestinian state is created, and if, God forbid, the westernmost border of the Judea-Samaria is Qalqilia and Tulkarem, then they are only 9 miles from the Mediterranean Sea. And if we hand over control of the Jordan River, which of course the Palestinians will demand, then there's nothing to stop a 10 million man Islamic march to the sea.
So,
But anyway, the point was, and this is the bottom line, that the Council on Foreign Relations people said to me two things. Firstly, Israel will be surrendered to the Muslims, and America doesn't care about UN resolutions 242 and 338 calling for new borders, which are secure, recognized, and defensible. And secondly, and this is the key to my message, it's why I wrote Christian Revival for Israel's Survival. They said to me that there's only one thing that made America great, and that's the barrel of oil, the steady price of oil, the steady supply of oil. And a very dear Christian friend and ally that night got up and said, you call yourselves Christians? You say that what made America great was the barrel of oil?
That was today's edition of The Promised Land.
So Rosalie, Dr. Fish, being a Hungarian, what did this have to do for you?
Well, I don't know if our viewers know, but my family escaped Hungary just like he did during the revolution, and also were persecuted by the Nazis. But unfortunately, Dr. Fish got caught by the Nazis, and with my parents' situation, it was Christians that hid them for a year when the Nazis were in Hungary. Most of my family was destroyed. He talks about this special memorial, this special cemetery, which obviously I would like to find out about. And we're going to be talking with him soon. You know, I have some questions. I never really asked my father while he was alive, or my mother, details about what they went through in hiding, and people who risked their lives to protect them and hide them. And I just really would encourage whoever's watching today, if you have family members that have experienced things in their lives that are historical events, take time to ask them now while they're alive. And
Most of them have not shared. He only has been sharing for about 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, a lot of survivors keep it in. So I'm excited to meet another Hungarian who lived a similar life that my father did, and my mom.
So what did you think about his message of hope?
Well, I'm only here because of the fraction of the people who risked their lives to hide and help the Jews, not just to people who put feet to their faith. It was because of people who were decent and loved humanity that hid my family during the occupation. So, if God forbid such a thing should happen again, that we hope that the majority would not be bystanders, but be
Proactive.
Yes. But they say bystanders are equivalent to persecutors, basically.
Well, that's our show for today, and we'll be back same time next time. Stay tuned. Glad to have you with us on The Crossover. Bye-bye.
You've been watching The Crossover, joining Jews and Christians through our God. For more information on today's program and The Crossover, you can contact Mitch and Rosalie by following the information on your screen. The Crossover team welcomes your comments, prayers, and suggestions. Thank you again for watching The Crossover.